Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. This is a continuation of the Healer Guide series. We're on to Celestial. As normal, in the comment section you'll find a pinned comment. This is going to have the timestamps to everything that I talk about in the video. So if you're looking for just the DPS rotations or healing or artifacts or skill point spec, supercharge testing, whichever part of Celestial you're looking for is going to be in that pinned comment to skip right to that timestamp. In terms of Celestial, it's a power that I literally haven't been since it was released in 2013. I messed around with it just because basically everyone switched to Celestial at some point when it came out just because it was so powerful. You could basically just spam Retribution if you wanted just to do good damage. Then you had the Benediction buff, the Anoint buff, the Dark Pack buff. Celestial Healing was always very good. The Celestial Battle Healing was one of the most powerful ever in PvP. In competitive 5s, you had Celestial Healers wearing DPS gear, and because basically their damage was directly proportional to the amount of healing they did, so that was very powerful for a while until some things got adjusted. Plus, with the white mods, if they got in their comboing, it was really hard to interrupt them. So basically, Celestial is one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most changed powers since it was released. Light is up there, but when you think of like powers like Ice and Ice gadgets, Fire, Sorcery, like the beta powers, there hasn't really been too many changes to them. Electric's pretty much always been the same and constant throughout. But Celestial's seen a lot of changes to basically their supercharges, the powers. Celestial AM didn't really exist. The unfortunate part is, I really don't think we'll see Celestial changes at all anymore because the developer that was who created Celestial Sport is no longer with the company. So that means a dev would have to completely relearn Celestial from the ground up. So when you had a developer like Sport who literally created Celestial and did all the programming for it, it was easy to have a conversation with him and try to get some changes through, or at least he would know what he was talking about with that. Now you've got a developer. I don't know who's in charge of Celestial now, but in terms of that, he'd have to basically relearn everything from the ground up and may have take Celestial in a completely different direction. So I really don't foresee Celestial changes or good Celestial changes for a while, just because of that fact. Sport's no longer with them, but we'll kind of get into the guide here. I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, for Celestial DPS, like I said before, Celestial has its strong suits and its weaker points. Celestial single target, as you'll see later, is very strong and consistent, where Celestial AoE is not so consistent. It's basically like middle of the pack DPS. It's definitely not good. It's not terrible. It's basically right in the middle. Celestial DPS, as you'll see, is really dependent on a couple powers doing well. So basically, if Divine Light doesn't basically crit, if Plague doesn't crit, if your Wrath of the Presence doesn't crit, it's not so much you're going to be terrible, you're just not going to have a good parser. So basically, it's going to be really frustrating for you trying to test Celestial properly because it's so heavily not really dependent on crits. It's just those powers specifically critting doing well. So you'll kind of see as I go in the rotations. But we'll kind of get into the spec here first. So in terms of skill point spec, it's going to be the exact same as a regular DPS. So you're going to be super powered spec. For Celestial, critical attack chance is going to be maxed out. The critical attack damage is going to be maxed out. Max out might and power. And then put the rest into health. The reason why don't put any precision, because Celestial is really hard to do weapon taps in between just because you're straight in combos each time. So it's not the easiest to keep a consistent weapon tap with. So you don't want necessarily put skill points into that, where you can put skill points into health just because you're going to be melee for the majority of the good rotations, as well as if you're running the Tetrahedron, then obviously you want your health as much as you can go. In terms of iconic powers, you're going to need Robot Sidekick, you're going to need a Venom Boost. I've got Sonic Cry spec here. You don't have to spec Sonic Cry. It was just something I was messing around with and didn't change the spec. But Robot Sidekick and Neo Venom Boost you are going to need for Celestial. For AoE, there's one rotation that requires Heat Vision that I will show you guys later. But you may also want Heat Vision spec as well if you want to keep it on the same kind of loadout. But that's just for one variation. And then in terms of, say, with Acrobats, who's mentioned that what I spec here, all I do really for that is grapple line attack and a rocket assisted glide. Once again, you don't really need to. You just need rocket assisted glide. I take the knockback resistance as well. Don't worry about these recoveries because they don't scale well at all anymore. Just take the resistance. In terms of weapons, once again, all I'm doing is just putting one skill point into my weapon to take it. Don't need any weapon combos at all. That's just a waste of skill points. Okay, so into the gear. One-handed, you're always going to have the blast adapter mod in. For head mod, Celestial, basically since they don't have any supercharges, you're using it yourself. Like Cursed Idol is a supercharge, I'll show you later, but Neo Venom Burst boost works better with Celestial. Or if you're trying to cheese or take advantage of the Eye of the Gemini meta, you may want like Speed Drain or another supercharge like that, like a 25%er to take advantage. So then you put your head mod to that. But I have Critical Anoint just for my single target rotation. If you're healing, I'll show you a different mod there. It's going to be Sacrifice instead. Neck mod's always going to be Escalating Might. The back mod, I have Accelerated Divine Light. Chest mod, I have Extended Supercharge just because, so I get 5% back from Neo Venom Boost because Neo Venom Boost doesn't have a head mod. Leg mod is Restorative Wrath of the Presence. This you don't have to really put there. It's just something. The heals from it are really low, so don't worry about it. Ring, Trinket. For trinkets, basically you're going to swap between two. For AoE hallways and for ads, you can have the Summer Event Trinket or Booed if you don't have the Summer Event Trinket. And then for boss fights, you're going to run the Lantine Seahorse. Then obviously the DPS Trinket, Orbital Spy Drop. Shoulders, hand mod's going to be max damage. Waist, feet, Tumbling Master just because of acrobatics. Ring, Bottled City Soda for your artifact soda. Soul Amplifier, Scrap the Soul Cloak, and Eye of the Gemini is what I run just to keep my might sustainable. You can also run the Tetrahedron if you want to. If you want to keep that buff, then you just basically replace either Scrap the Soul Amplifier with it or Scrap the Soul Cloak, depending on your supercharge. If people are spamming like Eye of the Gemini in your group, but it's an option to run Tetrahedron. You can also, because of the power requirements on, you'll see this is very power heavy just because I have Robot Psychic, which I'll get into. So you may also want to run like a Megahedron, which I don't have in this list here, but Megahedron would also be an option that is available to you as well. If you don't want to worry about the Eye of the Gemini cheese, and because it's only really good at 160, if you don't have this at 160, then it's not really worth it. So then you could either run the Tetra, you can run the Megahedron for some extra power, but you have some options available to you there. And in terms of stats, you're basically looking at the way I'm spec'd right now. 79,373 health. I have the 3 power generator mods, so I'm at 71,133. I don't have the 3 health generator mods. Might's going to be 39,067. Precision 11,439. Weapon DPS and weaponization rating. And that's basically what we're sitting at there in terms of stats. And that's unbuffed as well. Okay, so I wanted to give a disclaimer, put up here on the text, disclaimer. I wanted to share with you guys, since I haven't been Celestial, obviously, since it came out, which is like 5+ years ago, my Celestial comboing clipping is going to be a little bit slower. I have a tendency to prefer fast clipping powers. That's just me. That's the staple of Obsidian Chill and his career in DC, is basically fast clipping. Celestial is more like slow, methodical clipping, where if you clip too fast, you lose the damage, which basically I tended to do when I first, started testing Celestial. So for players that are going to be more comfortable with Celestial, that you're more comfortable with the clipping and being Celestial for a while, you may find yourself doing better than myself with these rotations. So just keep that in mind when you're seeing these results, or if you're seeing my clipping is a bit slower in my videos, or in my example videos later, or in the rotations here. It's just because I have a tendency to go too fast with Celestial, which loses damage. So basically I do like, maybe half second slower, or a little bit slower, so to make sure I have that damage before I clip. So obviously if someone's more comfortable with Celestial, they could be doing more damage with these same rotations that I'm showing. So I just want to get that away first. In terms of the actual Celestial DPS loadouts, you're going to see basically the same powers being used, just maybe in different orders. Like you may not see Robot Psychic, you may not see Admonish, you might see like Curse, Consume Soul, Wrath of the Presence. So you're going to see pretty much the same powers being used each time, just in different orders, because people have made their own personal preference. Basically, I'm going to show you that the melee rotation that I found the most success with. This may be different from yours, because of your experience with Celestial, but this is the one that I found that did the best here. So basically, it's going to be Divine Light, Admonish, Plague, Wrath of the Presence, Robot Psychic, and Neo Venom Boost. This is going to be AoE melee. So Divine Light, basically, I'm just using that for the PI setup. I'm not doing into corrupted or cleanse plague, just because that takes too long, and in a fight you don't have time to do like a divine light into cleanse plague. You can't do plague into corrupted divine light continually to start your rotation, because it's all back end dots with a little burst damage on plague and divine light, so you're just going to fall behind. So essentially I'm doing just divine light just to set up the PI and to set up the initial dots. I've admonish. You could technically use Consume Soul into Corrupted Wrath of the Presence, but I find that unless it crits, because Consume Soul is single target damage anyway, so it's a little bit slower there on damage in terms if you're fighting a big ad wave. So since Consume Soul, and basically you're hoping that Corrupted Wrath of the Presence crits. If it doesn't, then it's lower damage. Where Admonish, you have the dots from Admonish ticking the entire time while you're setting up Plague. So you have Divine Light dots, you have Admonish dots, you'll have eventually have the Plague dots, but basically it takes a little bit of time to set up Plague into Corrupted Divine Light. So I find that it's pretty similar, Consume Soul and Admonish, but I find that unless Consume Soul crits, Admonish is the much more consistent damage, setting up the Admonish into Cleanse Blight, I should say. So basically Divine Light, no combo, just for the PI setup and the initial dot. You have Admonish into Cleanse Blight, which is your tap melee range hold, and then you're going to have go into Plague. So basically you're clipping the Cleanse Blight with Plague and going into the tap melee, tap range, hold melee, and into Corrupted Divine Light. And then basically you're clipping the Corrupted Divine Light with Rest of the Presence, and then doing tap melee, hold melee for Cleanse to Consume Soul. And then you have Robot Sidekick out the entire time. So yes, this is going to be a very power heavy rotation with Robot Sidekick, so you can always drop Sidekick and just do a little bit less damage, or have another power that you prefer, like Death Mark, something like that. Even though Death Mark, the explosion, where did I see Death Mark? So you have the Corrupted Blessing explosion, but that's delayed, as well as it takes a little bit of time to set up that. So it's not always beneficial. You can also run Sacred Light, the Supercharge Generator, if you want, instead of Robot Sidekick for a little bit extra Supercharge regen. So there's options. This is very power heavy, but there's options available to you if you don't want to run Robot Sidekick. This is just going to be some consistent damage from Sidekick, because there's really no other power to use. But that's going to be the AoE loadout. Okay, so that's kind of an indication of what the Celestial AoE will look like. You saw I screw up the combo once there. Didn't affect the parser too much, but essentially, like I said before, I wouldn't say Celestial is crit dependent, but at the same time, it's not crit dependent. It's just basically like if you Divine Light has a good initial crit, like one of these crit, then you know it's going to be like a good parse. Same thing, Admonish is really consistent. You don't have to really put the crits on that. A Plague crit would be really nice. You want kind of consistent crits on Wrath of the Presence. So it's just that crits add a lot of consistency to it. So you can see like some parses are going to be lower. For the first parse is going to be lower because of obviously I'm setting up all the dots. So I don't have the Plague dots ticking, everything like that. So obviously the first parse is going to be low. Then I'm getting into like 32s, 35s, 30s, 17 I'm running out of power. So once I said Celestial is a very, very power heavy power set, because I'm not only because I'm using Sidekick, because I'm using comboing. It's just Celestial is power heavy for healing too. It's just a power heavy power set, but essentially gives you an idea there. Like between 30 and 35k is not terrible. Even like the 33 there. It's not bad parsers. It's just not great. It's kind of in middle of the pack. That's what I said before. Celestial, very power heavy, middle of the pack DPS, but a great healer. So it's basically, don't look for Celestial for DPS side. Celestial is amazing for the healing side, but at least it can do DPS if you need to. You could always drop off Robot Psychic if you're missing the power and just throw in like a couple extra Wrath of the Presence. You can also mix in like you can also change it around if you want. This is more me if you want to take advantage of Critical Anoint. That's in your head mod. Where did Anoint go? I'm just blind. There it is. So you could technically, Divine Light, clip with Anoint, and then go into Plague, and then you have more. You basically have Wrath of the Presence spam until you have Divine Light. That's another option as well. So it's just not terrible parsers, not great parsers, kind of right in between. Okay, so in terms of the single target loadout Celestial, this is where Celestial basically shines a lot more than certainly the AoE. The AoE is more kind of subpar, middle of the pack stuff. Celestial single target is up on the high end. It's certainly not the best, but it's very close and very consistent to doing great single target damage without needing necessarily heat vision. I'll show you one with heat vision. That's going to be the ranged one, but essentially the main loadout that I found is Consume Soul, clip with Anoint. So you're not doing Corrupted Wrath of the Presence with this. You're basically just clipping Consume Soul with Anoint. Anoint is your weapon buff. Even though you're not weapon tapping, like I said, it's just awkward in the comboing. This is basically just to set up the 2% crit buff with the Critical Anoint. So if I go back here, Critical Anoint, grant 2% critical strike stance. So if I kind of show that here, so if I go into my crits, you're going to see 26% and 106%. Critical weapon attack, that's your actual weapon damage. Ability, that's your actual might powers. So if I was at 26, now if I do Anoint, if I go back into my stats here, I'm at 28%. And so basically it increases your critical chance, which when you're dealing with high damage hitting powers like the initial Divine Light, with the Plague, with Consume Soul, Corrupted Wrath of the Presence. So basically you want to get as many crits as you can with Celestial, and this is basically just to help you. And essentially, you don't necessarily acquire it. You can certainly just do straight, in terms of single target damage, you could basically still just do Plague to Corrupted Divine Light. You could do, and then clip that into Divine Light, Cleanse Plague, and then just basically spam Consume Soul and Corrupted Wrath of Presence, and just do that 3 times until Plague resets. Like, that's the availability to you. But I found that just to get a chance to get some more damage, just because you don't need the extra power usages. Because basically, if you're not using these 3 powers into your single target rotation, then it's basically a damage lock. If you try to throw in like Retribution, you try to throw in, even Sacred Light. If you try to throw in like Heat Vision, I'll show you one that's max range, just because Consume Soul is a melee. But the more you try to throw in powers besides, Consume Soul, which is great on single target, Plague, Divine Light, it's basically turns into a damage loss. So basically, I just have these clipped, then I do a Plague into Corrupted Divine Light, and then clip that with Divine Light, Plague Cleansed, and then basically go into Consume Soul, Corrupted Wrath of the Presence twice in a row, and then basically clip the third one with Anoint, and then just basically restart. And the Robot Psychic, yes, I know Robot Psychic is less for range damage, but since you're melee with single target, or close to melee range, to get Corrupted Wrath of the Presence, Robot Psychic does a bit more damage there. So in terms of the single target melee rotation, or in loadout, this is what it's going to be here. Okay, so that's Celestial Single Target, melee. It's also mid-range as well. Like Wrath of Presence is mid-range. It's like EP range, so like 20 meters. So you can still, like, even if I did it from, like, say, like this far away, probably like this far, you can see that it's still hitting. So you don't necessarily have to be melee. The only melee part is for a Robot Sidekick for that rotation. So the Celestial combo range itself is still far. It's just you're missing out a bit of the Robot Sidekick melee damage then. But it is very... It needs crit consistency. I wouldn't say crit dependent because there's more power sets that are crit dependent than Celestial. But you can see, you know, the first parser is going to be a bit slow because you're just setting up all your dots. They don't have a chance to tick the entire duration. And then it gets into more like the typical 18k, 26k, basically 22% crit, 26, a little bit more average there. But the thing is, you don't need to have a high crits. It's just that the plague, if you don't get the crit on the big plague hit, if one of your Wrath of Presence, Corrupted Wrath of Presence don't crit, if you don't get like initial crit on your Divine Light, then you know it's going to be a lower parser. But the consistency is still there. 26k, 21k, 22k unbuffed. So the possibility for this rotation is still there. It's just that you can kind of tell if it's going to be a bit lower damage just from if Plague doesn't crit or one of the Wrath of Presence ones don't crit. I was also probably doing it a bit slow or not fast enough just from my experience with the clipping the combo. So once again, if you're more experienced, you could probably even have increased the damage. But the template or their foundation is there with this rotation. Very power heavy with Robot Psychic. If you need to save a bit of power or keep more range, you can also put Heat Vision in here or something. But it's very power heavy with Robot Psychic because Celestial is power heavy already. So be prepared to clip your soda. Usually I would clip it with, when you clip Anoint the second time, you always clip that with your soda if you want, if it's zip. And then you can keep your power consistent. But it is very power heavy. You can drop Robot Sidekick. You'll probably add another like 1,000 DPS or so, 1,000, 1,500 DPS to this rotation. But the foundation is there to do well with this single target, especially with Celestial single target. Okay, so the only other rotation and loadout that I would mention would be if you can't range single target. So if you have to do, if you can't melee single target, and you need to do max range, then there's one available with Heat Vision. Just because you can't always use Corrupted Wrath of Presence because you may need range single target fights or you don't want to be melee. So basically, it's the same setup. It's Consume Soul, which is basically setting up the Consume Soul dot, which is single target at the beginning. With Anoint, and then basically you're just going into Plague to Corrupted Divine Light, clip that with Divine Light Plague Cleansed, and then basically into Heat Vision, and then you're holding Heat Vision the entire time. So you've got the Divine Light dots, you've got the Burning dots, you've got Plague dots, you've got the initial Consume Soul dot, which isn't too many ticks, and then basically you just restart the rotation. So that's your max range Celestial. At the same time, you could also throw in Retribution. If you didn't want to use Heat Vision, you could obviously throw in Retribution as well to cleanse Wither. That's going to be max range, but once again, Heat Vision is already great on single target. You've got the crits basically hitting on Plague, hopefully the Plague large crit. You've got the Divine Light crit going, and then hopefully some Heat Vision ticks as well. So that's it's certainly not as good as the melee rotation, but if you need max range loadout, then this is what it would availability would be. Okay, one thing I did want to touch on with Celestial is the way the comboing is. You're not specifically tied into one spot. And what I mean by that is when you're in the comboing chain, you can kind of move around, you can kind of hop, you can kind of move if you need to chase a target or get out of range. So I just kind of, it's harder to explain than it actually is. But what I mean, like say if I just start the rotation here, see I'm kind of like hopping around. So I moved, I started the combo back here for Plague, moved all the way over here. Same thing if I'm doing like Wrath of the Presence. I can move around while I do it. Going to Plague again. Oh, shoot that time, but you get the idea. So it's obviously the more you do it, you get used to it as well. So you're not tied in the same spot. You don't have to just sit and do the comboing in the exact same spot and have the the target not move. You're not tied into just sitting and comboing in the same spot. You can move around. So you saw the distance I covered just from that hopping. So essentially, it's more, the more you play around with it, the more you get experience with it. You just basically do it without even thinking. But just think that you can move around while you're in the combo chain and not have it get interrupted or canceled. So basically, it just gives you an idea that you can be a little bit more mobile with it. Just the more you get used to it. So just if you have to block or get out of the way, you don't necessarily have to stop. Like say if you're in like Hive or USE, like those raids were strafing runs. If you had to get, even the CB's charged, if you had to get out of the strafing run, you can still do that while keeping your damage up, just by getting hopping out of the way. But essentially, that's what I mean from that. Just the more you get used to it, the more you're playing around with it, the more fluid it will become. Okay, so on to Celestial Healing. Celestial Healing, like I said before, it's been a very popular choice since it was first introduced. It's just because of its max range heals, very consistent. It's a really good mix of bursts and heal over times. And it's basically, even though Celestial is a very combo heavy power, there's really only one combo you're using with Celestial Healing. So it's in the same one each time. So it's much consistent from that point of view. In terms of the loadout for basically what I use, this is pretty much a very common one, a very go-to one, mix of everything. You may use the same rotation or you may have some differences. Basically, Celestial Healing is basically all based on preferences. So you may have run one or two different powers, but essentially you're running the same kind of concept, mixing in bursts and heals, just maybe using in different situations. Like I said before, basically I never Celestial healed. This is the first time I Celestial healed. I've been around Celestial healers all the time, so I understand the concept behind it, but I've actually personally never Celestial healed until this guide. I only Celestial DPS when it came out. So in terms of Concentrated Ground before, that's a supercharge that I used to personally like in the past, but it's seen too many changes. It's nerfed its damage protection as well as being increased to a 10,000 supercharge cost. Right now it's Sacrifice. Sacrifice obviously isn't ideal. It is a group supercharge, but it works differently because it's a standard tank taunt. So usually it's not an issue because usually the tanks are taunting right away. It was really only an issue in survival mode where tanks aren't constantly using powers. They have to block and basically counter. So there was times where Celestial healers may have died in survival mode just because the taunt was out where the tanks didn't taunt. But now it's not too much of an issue because usually there's tanks always hitting powers. Sometimes there's two tanks in the run. So usually it's not an issue running Sacrifice. Sacrifice, you don't get a shield yourself. So basically it's a group shield besides yourself, and it's a heal over time. So it's a good supercharge. Not as good as Concentrated Ground, but it's certainly in this meta where group shields are the way to go, as well as the Eye of the Gemini for healing. You need to run Sacrifice. You need to run a supercharge because Eye of the Gemini is great not only for the supercharge regen for yourself, but for the group and for the healing that you get from the actual artifact itself. So essentially for the loadout, we have Admonish. This is your only combo. You're going to be Admonish into Blight. And basically Admonish is a 4-man burst. And then Blight basically is the 8-man heal over time, which is 6 ticks for 6 seconds. So basically you're just doing Admonish, tap, melee, hold, range. That's going to be the actual combo that you do each time. And the 4-man burst goes to yourself and to the 3 group mates with the least health, basically, the most injured ones. Consume Soul is going to be your 8-man heal. It's going to be a little bit burst of a hot as well. Renew is obviously your instant heal. Now I should mention as well, as you see, the cooldown is 1.5 seconds and the power cost is 750. That's just because I have the orb on. So if I take this off, you'll be able to see what Renew normally is if you don't have the orb. So cooldown is 0.5 seconds and power cost is 250, and that's basically just your priority heal. Fortuitous Light, basically just Divine Light. They just changed the name for healing. It's the same thing. That's going to be an 8-man burst and heal over time. So the 8-man burst, it's basically, this is the power that you want to keep for when you need the entire group to have a large heal, like if they just took a lot of damage, like say in like the Deathstroke fight in High V, or after the slam from Sea Beast. Basically this is you don't necessarily use this for the heal over time. You want to use this for the burst. The burst is much stronger than the heal over time, so you want to use this when the group takes damage instead of just kind of using it just for the heal over time, because the burst is much stronger. And then Blessing, which is just your 4-person shield, so that's common from Blessing as well. Yeah, so basically you're just always using Admonish into Corrupted Blight, or Cleansed Blight, Admonish and Cleansed Blight, which is basically you're going to set up that heal over time each time, and then basically you're clipping that with Consume Soul, and then basically you're just either clipping it with Consume Soul or you're clipping it with Renew if you need the priority heal to keep your pet out for Orb, and then using, basically I'm going to call it Divine Light, whatever Fortuitous Light, Divine Light, whatever you want to call it, for your burst and for a small heal. Then you've got your shield. If the group needs it, or when you're running Sacrifice, you can also use Blessing yourself just so you're protected. So basically you're clipping Sacrifice with Blessing. That's a possibility as well. Just to make sure you have a heal, and then it basically would stack heals with anything else. So that's essentially what it is here. Trying to think what else. There's certainly other powers you can run. That's basically one, like I said before, it just comes down to preference. But basically, if you're looking for one rotation to kind of give you good burst, good heal over time, shields, the priority heal, this is going to be the go-to here, which I'm sure is very common. It's one of the most common special healing loadouts. Okay, so in terms of the spec for Celestial, once again, it's super powered. You can't run hybrid. Celestial is very power spammy, as well as you can't really do consistent weapon regen. You certainly can, but when you're doing combos and everything, you want to make sure you focus on the heal. Even though for the extra 5%, like if you feel comfortable with it, you can use hybrid just for the extra 5% resto and dom. But supercharge is very handy for Celestial just because it's very power spammy. And then obviously you got max critical healing chance, max critical healing magnitude, max restoration. And then basically after this, once again, it's preference. I put about 100 into might and power just for the extra power pool, so I have the ability to spam. If you're in a really good group with a controller consistently, then you could put more into dominance just to kind of help your heals and your shields. And you basically your healing formula as well. But always make sure you have enough power available to you, especially if you're using the orb. That you have enough power to continue healing. So basically it comes down to basically a split there. Put might and power and dominance. In terms of iconic powers, you don't need any iconic powers for healing. Don't worry about it. And in terms of weapons, once again, hand blasters, you just need enough to take Solar Flame, which would be your best supercharged regen combo. So that's really what you'd be using there. You could also, I guess another weapon you could use if you prefer, is dual wield, and you want to basically take enough for. Is it just? It's basically flurry shot. Oh, not dual wield. Sorry, dual would be the actual weapon mastery combo I was referring to. Bow, and that's going to be flurry shot. So basically, if you want another weapon, bow flurry shot, which is basically just a tap 3 hold, that's a very good personal regen combo instead of the weapon mastery. So if you don't want to use hand blasters, you can use bow as well, or technically you could use dual wield for the weapon mastery for damage wise, but you don't get as much supercharge with the weapon mastery combo variant. It's going to be the main weapon, bow and hand blaster. And I should also mention, in terms of battle healing, I'm not going to cover battle healing in this. I'm going to give a link in the description to the battle healing guide or the social guide on the forums that you can tune into and basically read up on battle healing there. But I'm not going to cover it here just because, one, I don't have an experience with battle healing, and B, I'm not a huge supporting in battle healing just because it was a lot better in the past. That's why I don't like battle troll, battle tank, all the thing. I prefer to keep the role synergy what it was meant to be. So that's just basically my personal preference, but if you want to look into battle healing, I'll post the link to the forum guide there. So back into the actual gear. Once again, my healing gear is much lower, but essentially with a weapon, you're always running replenishing adapter. You don't need restorative adapter. The healing is not worth it. You always want the power. The head mod, you're going to be running Supercharged Sacrifice 3. Neck mod is going to be Focus Restoration. Back mod is going to be Accelerated Blessing. Chest mod is going to be Power Efficiency. Leg, you can also run extended supercharge as well. I just prefer power efficiency with healing, especially for healing and controlling when I know I'm going to be using consistent power, and there may be times where I really have to spam powers. I'd rather have power efficiency. Legs, trinket, utility belt. I'm running the creepy jack just because that gives me 298 restoration. You can run damage if you want, but I just rather have a resto trinket, and then supply orbital and your healing trinket. Hands is just empower channeling if you want. You could take max damage if you wanted. And then in terms of artifacts, I've already done a video on this for the best healing artifacts and my opinions there. So I'm running the Orb, the Eye of the Gemini, and Scrap of the Soul Cloak. You could also run the Omegahedron or Demon Fang. I would probably suggest the Demon Fang over like the Scrap of Soul Cloak, just because Demon Fang would get your the 5% restoration. You've got the Orb, which is already a great healing artifact with the pet and the increased priority heal, which I've shown in previous videos as well. And the Eye Gemini, like I said, use this if you're at 160, just because you get Caster's Watch, which restores 3% health and 2% supercharge every second for people standing within the duration for up to 6 seconds. So basically, you regen supercharge for yourself, the entire group, and you heal them. So it's just a very powerful artifact for the tank and for healers. So that's why I suggest running that until it gets patched. Hopefully it does. I don't agree with that meta, but it's still a very powerful artifact for healing and for helping your group. So basically, the ideal situation would be the Orb, a Demon Fang. Demon Fang's going to help you regen power for the Orb. And then you have the Eye of the Gemini. You can also run the Omegahedron. Like there's options available to healing. There's the Manacles as well if you want the 10% cooldown on Sacrifice and Blessing. So you could run the Manacles as well. Basically, any shield power, which is Sacrifice and Blessing, would be reduced by 10%. You've got that option available to you. So you've got some options with the healing artifacts, but if it was me and if I had all the 160 artifacts I wanted, it would be Demon Fang, Orb, and Eye of the Gemini. And then when the meta finishes for Eye of the Gemini, then yeah, you can switch into another healing artifact if you want. But those would be the 3 that I would run. I just don't have Demon Fang because I'm switching into the tank one soon, so I just didn't want to level up a needless artifact that I wouldn't be healing with anymore. And Demon Fang is helpful for precision DPS, and I don't precision DPS. So that's why I don't have the Demon Fang. Okay, so I'm in Doom Metropolis here just basically to show off the Celestial Healing rotation in terms of its effectiveness with the burst heals, everything like that, just because it's the easiest place to test it with that 30k dot. So essentially the only actual combo you're using is Admonish into Blight Cleansed, which is going to be tap, melee, hold range. Everything else is just using the actual power. So if you need to do like Admonish, Blight Cleansed, clip into Consume Souls, you get a little bit of burst and you're healing over time, or into Renew if you need the burst heal, basically. So you're always using the combo Admonish. So it's going to be tap, melee, and hold range. That's essentially what it's going to be there. Basically, in terms of timing, you can get used to it, but I just basically tap melee with it when the glyphs start to come out, and then basically you're into there. So you've got basically two options. So you can do Admonish and into Consume Soul for a little bit burst and extra healing over time as well. Or you can do Admonish into priority heal, so you've got your pet out there as well every 9 seconds if you're running the Orb artifact. So essentially that's what's going to be. So Victorious Light or Divine Light, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to keep calling it Divine Light because that's what it is. That's going to be your immediate burst, like your big 8-man burst and a little healing over time, blessing your shield, sacrifice the shield, everything like that. So we'll kind of get into it here, kind of duck in, duck out, so I can kind of show the effectiveness. Okay, into priority this time. I have no idea why I'm not getting the dot. Okay, Consume Soul that time. See if we can get some Divine Light examples next. There's the burst, initial burst there, wasn't even a crit. And then the healing over time from Divine Light. There's just the priority by itself and the heals. Admonish into priority. Okay, so we just took some damage now. The Admonish burst, Cleanse Blight. You can see the ticks there. Again, this time we'll do it into Consume Soul. Ooh, just got interrupted there. As you can see the burst there from Consume Soul, and then I've got the double healing over time.
Flat on the floor of my life, the world just leaves me behind. I wanted more at this point, but I keep losing my voice. I don't wanna be like that though. Better grow a fucking backbone. I don't wanna be like that though. Better grow a fucking backbone.
fire in my head got me on edge. I'm going out tonight, faded on a thread. Don't know what's next, I wanna feel alive. I kissed a stranger in a white dress. She put a crown on top of my head. Said every king needs a queen in his bed. I said, hey girl, I'd like to stay here for a while, just you and I. Far from the places we can't get away from. She said, hey boy, I like your style. I'll let you play me for a while. Play me till the sun rises, play me like a violin. Here with you now, not coming down. Leave my insanity up here in the clouds. Look what we found, oxygen we can breathe. Let the madness slowly undress. Rip the mask off over our heads. We can dive down deeper instead. I said, hey girl, I'd like to stay here for a while, just you and I. Far from the places we can't get away from. She said, hey boy, I like your style. I'll let you play me for a while. Play me till the sun rises, play me like a violin. Play me till the sun rises, play me till your hands give in. Play me like a violin. Play me till the sun rises, play me till you can't hide it. Play me like a violin. Play me till the sun rises, play me till your hands give in. Play me like a violin. Play me till the sun rises, play me till you can't hide it. Play me like a violin.
I'm dead inside.
Your sword cause the time is near. Gotta do it big like Bonnevier. I'm a rock star on a chandelier. Off the walls, yeah, I'm about to go crazy. For the beast, anybody that can tame me. What a thrill always seems to amaze me. In the forest of youth and the raven. Listen, I stop till the break of dawn. Shirts come around, probably best to run. Playing my eyes, can't catch me now. I'm young and numb, trying to have some fun. Don't judge me, you only live once. Moments in the back, so we gotta live it up. Party in the leg, everybody get it now, get it now, get it now, get it now, get it now. Run wild, I'm on a mission and I won't stop. No destination, but it's worth a shot. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. Run wild. I'm on a mission and I won't stop. No destination, but it's worth a shot. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. Please out of my way. No rules on the why it begins. Naive, so a L is a win. Got a grin on my face and we're off to the race. Going fast and we never slow down. Head to head, we go pound for pound. Take the mob downtown, flood the town. Cops come and get down, down, down.
100 miles and running, and I'm loving all the bruises. 100 miles and running while I'm chugging Rocky View in Houston. Tell them that I'm coming up, I'm cruising. Space boots coming loose, but all I feel is music. Like no, 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 never look back. No, 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 never look back. No, 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 never look back. No, 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 never look back.
Run wild, I'm on a mission and I won't stop. No destination, but it's worth a shot. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. Run wild, I'm on a mission and I won't stop. No destination, but it's worth a shot. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go. You gotta let me go.
Fame is in the front seat, trouble with the curb. Love is in the back seat, singing like a bird. Oh no, take me to the good life. Stranger on the mountain, hanging on your words. Walking in a nightmare, everything is blurred. Oh no, take me to the good times. Don't forget what you told me. I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing. Watching, waiting, my prey is praying. There's no escaping. My blood's pumping. I go 100. The hunter, the hunted. Love is in the spaceship, crashing through the air. Devil's in the details, lap is in your hair. Oh no, I can see the future. Take another picture, drop it on your tongue. Let your body burn down, breathe it in your lungs. Oh no, take me to your leader. Don't forget what you told me. I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing. Watching, waiting, my prey is praying. There's no escaping.
I'm a believer. This ain't no pill in a bottle, I got a fever. That keep that heat on the throttle, got all the pretty women. I mean whatever you say, I'm not a player. Shh, I run the play. We got it moving from New York to LA. Got all the angels, tell the devil he ain't welcome today. I know you probably not the same the way you whip at the waist. You gotta know that this the time and the place. I'm feeling so alive right now. I feel like I can fly, like I can touch the sky right now. I guess I got my head in the clouds. Right now, right now, right now, right now. I'm not fazed by the things you gotta say. I guess I got my head in the clouds. I'm feeling so alive right now. I feel like I can fly, like I can touch the sky right now. I guess I got my head in the clouds. Right now, right now, right now, right now. I'm not fazed by the things you gotta say. I guess I got my head in the clouds.
I've been up, I've been down, I've been kicked down to the ground by the voices in my head. But you said life gets tough when you get older. That's why I raised the soldier, fight this battle till the end. I've been up, I've been down, I've been kicked down to the ground by the voices in my head. But you said life gets tough when you get older. That's why I raised the soldier, fight this battle till the end. Life gets tough when you get older. That's why I raised the soldier, fight this battle till the end. something better. But you throw me off just like a sweater. Sometimes I feel alone. Sometimes I feel alone. Try to pivot to a new life. Try to limit who I invite. Am I crazy? Am I dead wrong? Maybe lately I'm just headstrong. I give it away like Anthony Kiedis on his darkest day. I put it behind me, there's gotta be another way. I'm losing my mind, looking for signs of a better day. Maybe I just need a break. Ooh, I wanna feel there's something better. But you drift away just like the weather. Sometimes I feel alone. Sometimes I feel alone. I was waiting for closure. I was trying to posture. No one sees me now. I am treading the pavement like a renegade vagrant. No one sees me now. I wanna feel there's something better. But you're never gonna give me shelter. Sometimes I feel alone. Sometimes I feel alone.